نبدأ؟ جاهزين؟ أهلين, السلام عليكم everybody. We're going to do a brief introduction for both artists, Dania Saleh and Ahmed Angawi, before we get into this discussion that we'd like to have about similar practices in their field. So I'm going to give the floor to Dania Saleh to start talking about her wonderful artwork and her journey. And so you can go ahead.
Assalamu alaikum, bonsoir, and good evening, everyone. I would like to thank first Ranim Farsi Aya Al Rida and their amazing team. I would like to thank Ranim Bukhari, and I am super excited to share this panel with Ahmed Angawi. My name is Dania Al Saleh, and I am from Riyadh, Saudi Arabia. I am a painter, an artist. I loved painting since a very young age, and I found myself with an undergrad degree from Saud University with a major in computer applications. After I graduated, I moved to Jeddah, where I fell in love with Dar Safiya bin Zagir Institute, where she promoted art and teaching art. My tutor there was the amazing artist, master artist, Dorothy Boyer. She's a British artist. She was my tutor, she was my mentor, and I have been studying under her for many, many years. She encouraged me to pursue art, and I did, taking as much courses as I could when I was traveling abroad. And then I was fortunate enough to do my first exhibition in 2012. And from then, I'm thankful that I became a full-time artist. 3 years ago, I moved to London, where I moved my artist practice as well. And finally this year, I applied, and I started, this is my first year, doing a Master's of Fine Arts in Computational Arts. I exhibit regionally in Saudi Arabia, in Dubai, Abu Dhabi, Turkey, and Kuwait. I am with Author Gallery, and you can find my work there.
So let's talk a little bit about the pieces that we have today in your presentation.
Okay.
I know you work with a lot of mediums, pencil, watercolor, and things like that. Can you tell us how the practice of your sacred geometry worked on these?
Well, I started painting actually in oil and watercolor. And then by chance, I took this course at the Princess School of Traditional Arts about 10 years ago, on which I fell in love with and pursued more courses with them. And I wanted to integrate that in my practice. I know it's a very sacred and very traditional art practice, but I wanted to make it my own. So I construct the lines and the shapes and then deconstruct them again. And I like to use narratives in my work, and that tell a story. So for example, this piece was called Ahwak, which means I'm in love with you, and it's based on the taboo of showing love in Saudi society. This piece was inspired by the bougainvillea plant, and trying to bend the rules of geometry and have its, make it a language on its own. This is a huge piece done all by watercolor, and it's 3 meters by 2, and it is another narrative of a love story. You can move on. This piece, unfortunately, was supposed to be displayed in this exhibition, but it didn't make it. And it's called A Room with a View, and it's about class separation in societies. So this piece is called Shoot to Kill. Again, there is a hidden message that I would like to convey. It is inspired by the horrible events, attacks that we've been experiencing the past 5-6 years, and I just wondered how young children have been forced to use guns in war-torn countries, and I found a parallel experience using detergents and cleaning agents at home, where we use the same trigger point in cleaning and killing germs and using guns and killing people. This is a very contemporary piece. I used table lamps to express the human form, actually, and it is about being different and not following the herd.
Would you like to talk about any of the other work?
Mm-hmm.
Would you like to talk about any of the other work?
As you can see, I use geometry, and I love using watercolor because it's very translucent and I love water, and it has a very unexpected events, which surprises me. And watercolor has this amazing property that it shows the underlying grid. So it's like making the visible invisible, making the pencil lines show deliberately. And I think that gives it a very, deep meaning to a piece.
Okay. Thank you so much, Tanya.
Thank you.
We're going to also do a short introduction for Ahmed Angawi's practice and what he's been working on for the past few years since he started an art and design practice. Go ahead.
Assalamu alaikum. First of all, I'd like to thank the General Authority for being here, and Raneem Bukhari for inviting me for the panel discussion, and of course Tala and Raneem Farsi and the team, all dear friends, and it's always a pleasure to be here. And I always run with Dania from now and then, so it's a pleasure to be with you here and be talking about our art and discussion, so I look forward for that. Just for an introduction, I would love to show you some of my work, but in a way, a window to what I do, whatever I do, and the practice of geometry and traditional arts and so forth. Why we do traditional arts, and because we really always been inspired by the nature and the things around us of God creations, and everything was built within those proportions. This is just an image of a snowflake, of microscopic image of each snowflake. We all fall within the hexagonal grid, but each one of them are different to one another. But you can see the beauty of the geometry in there within nature. And this is another example of our DNA section. That is, the spider of DNA was cut from the top, you will see a tenfold pattern, and that is something within our own bodies, and the pattern that exists with our own nature. So when we do patterns, and we do, it's not only just beautiful images or beautiful pattern, but it's really symbolized something that was there, and the idea of the timeless concept of timeless art, and the analysis of nature by itself has always been an inspiration. There's always this misconception that we, as Arabs and Muslims, went to the direction of patterns and so forth because of tahrim or the forbidden of images or pictures, but actually because I like to believe there's so much beauty that was there. We were so busy involved into that rather than, not going into the tahrim or forbidden of so forth. I come from Mecca and always been inspired by the rich diversity that it have. It's a breathe in, inhale and exhale between other cultures around. So today what we're doing here, it's great because we're also bridging the gap and continuing that tradition that we have in our country. I was always inspired by my father. He's an architect, and he have designed a house, and this house became a cultural house that was a very big role of shaping who I am right now, because I remember as a kid, always been involved with the craftsmen, working with them, and always been inspired to interact with them. Since I came back from the States, I did my bachelor degree in product design. I always been infused and inspired by the activity of the house. This is again a celebration of the traditional music of Sahba in Mecca, and meeting such intellectuals as Japanese monk who was seeing the similarity of chanting and the adhan in Mecca. So we do a lot of activities, whether music and so forth, but one of the things that as inspiration into my practice, it was this beehive that came to our window, and looking at it and the way it is placed between the Roshan or Mangur, and the geometry that exists between nature and the geometry we're trying to do as man, there's a beautiful similarity. So I started just taking the analysis, looking at the process, seeing how the bees built and design led me to this artwork that I'm going to be showing you, which is very much relating to the hexagonal grid, and it's using one unit, which is called simplicity and multiplicity. And I use one of the patterns that exist in the Old Jeddah, في رباط الخنجي الصغير, and I wanted to see if this pattern can really act and behave as the way it looks. So I started creating those units that is also based on the same principles of العاشق والمعشوق الخشب الموجود في جدة التاريخية, and how it's placed together, but in a new kind of format, a new kind of shape that every time I reshape it again, I come up with a different kind of variations, but all of them fall within the six-fold or the three-fold kind of grid. The studio by itself, I always use it to try my ideas and try the designs that I do, the art. So in this case, we used to do a gathering and the creative hub of musicians, people coming, speaking up. And I thought it was a fantastic chance to try to do a module system of furniture that based on the geometry and see how the people behave on it. And the results was a lot of experiment, try and error, and I was trying to deconstruct and construct again those patterns and look at those shapes that I was done, whether with a geometrical order or those proportion was done in a specific way or they're only just shapes. But every time I try to dissect and analyze, I'm always surprised to see there's always a new thing. By looking at the pattern that exists, and I realized that it consists of three simple units. Those units, when I reconstruct them again, you come up with different variation of system. Could be a shelving unit, it could be a sitting area, and they all consist of three simple units that you can always change them. In using today's contemporary materials as plywood, I was calling this multi-plywood, and it's a chance to us to interact with those patterns, not only just as a beautiful art piece, but also functional pieces around. I was very much inspired, as I was saying, by Mecca, and I was trying to look at one specific object, and I made it as my study thesis, which is called al-Mangur. It's similar to al-Mashrabiyya, but they're really well known in Hijaz as the term al-Mangur or al-Manqur. And all are those beautiful units that exist within the Rawashin. And they have this amazing geometry that is I see them repeating in Mecca and Medina and Jeddah and Yanbu'. So I really wanted to take it as a study case, and I have created a show with Other Gallery in an old house in Old Jeddah, and I made this place an introduction to this craft. So when you walk into the space, you would see the beautiful geometry of that wooden pieces and the history of it, displaying the images and also the geometrical analysis of drawing and the making analysis of it in wood. So I started collecting some of those pieces that sadly was fallen from the houses, but give them a chance so people can view it and understand the idea behind it. I love the practice of the concept of repeating unit. I think we have repetition in every day. We eat every day, we pray every day, we read every day. But when you do it with the conscious, you elevate, whether in your mind or body or spirit. So I think this practice has always been there with the craftsman and artisan in the past, and having it in today's time is some sort of a meditation on practice. I created from that different artwork, and this piece was again the construction of this mangur that showing the hidden underlying geometry of it because sadly this geometry or grid sadly was not known or disappeared in the area. I have met a lot of craftsmen or master craftsmen within that. They know how to do it in wood, but they haven't seen how is it done in a geometry way. And this has been passed on from one generation to another. For having been in the Princeton School of Traditional Arts in London, I have learned the language of geometry, and I'm now trying to document all those units into letters, as I call them, to form all those units to create words or sentences to form and fall into the grammar of Islamic architecture. So this is some of the images within the exhibition, displaying the paperwork and some of the paintings there. And some of those pages or paper are part of the pages of the book that's going to be about Mangur, which is I also here try to display the book holder as part of the artisan book that is made from the same technique of Mangur. And I always emphasize in the idea of the pattern of making a pattern. There's always this beautiful progression that you can see between a start and an end, and we always neglect it, and we always reach to the destination, and we always want to have the destination as a result. But in my work, I always like to emphasize that as a progressional work, and I saw there's a beauty in that, just seeing the steps one to another. And I took this work as a big part of what I wanted to do, and even looking at the tools that was made, it documented how is it done. And alhamdulillah, now I'm a teacher back home. I'm a program director of the Jamil House of Traditional Arts in the Old Jeddah, which is a collaboration project between the Princess School and Art Jamil. And there we're teaching the student how to develop this craft and to find a way to use contemporary design but using the old tradition way of making it. I think I should stop here because we have a lot, and then we can continue. Thank you.
Thank you. If we can have the slide with the names on it, please. That's okay. It's fine. Thank you so much for those lovely presentations. As you can all see, both artists have rooted their practice in very similar study. Both have had access to the Princeton School of Traditional Arts, where they have fallen in love with geometric patterns and the study of geometry, Islamic geometry, and the spirituality of it. And that's why we're having this discussion today, to see how their paths have joined and converged, and what are the things that they're working on at the moment. So I wanted to start with a question for both of you. It's fine, we can just... So both of you started your practice with different foundations. Dania, you studied computer applications, and Ahmed, you were in industrial design. So how did that change your perception and application of your practice? Dania, if you want to start.
Well, I don't know if it did. Basically, computer applications is, we started, and this was decades ago without giving away my age. And I always loved art, always drew on textbooks, procrastination from doing homework, on anything I could get hold of. And doing computer application was just a safe way to guarantee a future. I mean, I was encouraged to take it more than pursuing an art career at an earlier age. But I found myself at the end going back and majoring in something called computational arts, and which is very exciting. It's an ever-expanding subject. It's a context of using code and programming and algorithms in generating art. So the challenge for me now is how can I merge painting with computational, coding. Yeah.
That's great. Ahmed, if you want to talk about your journey as well.
Yes, I did my product design as a degree or industrial design in Brooklyn, and it's funny because I've always been interested in art and always trying to learn what's the relationship between art and design and craft. And it's always been a journey until now that I'm going through. But after I finished my degree, I went back home, and I really wanted to really work within the factory and the industrial persona. I felt there is something there that I needed to go back to, and I wanted to go back to the essence of making things. And I realized and found the craftsman is the goal, or the person I was looking for. So looking back home, looking at the craft that we have, sadly we have lost a lot, and we started this journey around the kingdom to go and look for craftsmanship, and that led me to travel around Saudi Arabia. So I started living in Egypt and Turkey and Morocco, and in the pursuit of looking of those craftsmen, because I didn't want it to lay in books and just see the stories that we were in all that time and the golden age and so forth. But I really wanted to see what is in presence right now. And that journey, I really created some artwork, created some design work, and I wanted to find still the bridge between those professions. And I realized in the beginning there's so much common principles that tie them together. And then I found that I can display and show things depends on who's the viewer, on what location they are. And having studying my master's degree in London in the School of Traditional Arts, learned the technique of how to develop this. And I think my journey to look for craftsmen made me realize maybe I am the craftsman that I'm trying to look for. And that started me in the journey of experimenting and doing. And like Dania, I do believe in the concept of living tradition, that nowadays we need to speak of today's time. So I realized by learning these beautiful principles and technique and this language of geometry, how can I display and express what I'm trying to say with today's technology, today's materials and so forth, because in the past they have done the same. They have used the best technology, the best tools to develop whatever they like to show at that time that there was a demand for it. It's a very interesting link because a lot of my friends in the galleries and so forth, they all tell me you have to decide, are you an artist, are you a designer, are you an architect or so forth. But I like to really work without categories, and I like to see, because I'm still in the experiencing and learning about myself. But I know for sure what I like to do, whatever I like to do, I like to give it its right. Depends on what it is. If it's in a design, I will give it its best to become a design object. If it's an art piece, I will give it its best to become an art piece. If it's a craft object, then I'll make it the best to be a craft. And this could be a debate or something we can always talk about, and what is the fine line between that. But I do believe there's a lot of shared qualities between the three of them.
So you are a multidisciplined artist.
Inshallah, yes. An artist is a very beautiful word, because for some reason, to be honest, if you be called an artist, you're elevated. You feel like maybe in Saudi in the past, an artist is somebody who have a free time and he's not taking seriously, fannan, typical,
as a hobby.
As a hobby. But subhanAllah, now it's happening. Hey, look at us, we're invited to come here, we're participating, and there is this interest to show. And I think this is an important part, because in any civilization, always if you want to learn about their culture, you look at their art. And big part of it is those artists and those people who produce. I call myself a maker. I think, I don't know why, but maybe for now, until later on.
That's a good word, yeah. Because you're doing multiple things, you're making multiple things.
Yes, as long as I'm making something, it's fine.
What you said about technology is very interesting, because I feel like you're going through that as well. Your style is very traditional, and yes, you're using very contemporary concepts in your work, but I want to know what your new work is going to look like now that you're studying computational arts. Like, is the aesthetic going to change, or is it just going to be a completely different project?
Well, the past few months, studying this course has been an eye-opener. Actually, it's a very challenging field, because and it's very parallel to any artistic practice. So in painting, you have the brush, you have the paints, you learn a skill in coding and programming. You are learning the code, the language, whether it's processing, whether it's open frameworks based on Java or C++. So you're learning the language and you're using that skill to produce pieces of art. For now, I have been experimenting. I haven't, I'm just, it's like a journey for me, and there's so many unexpected outcomes and artifacts that I'm finding myself with, which is very, very exciting. So it's still a journey, and I guess I don't know what will appear.
I feel like both of you are on this journey,
Yes.
and you're both kind of experimenting with the different fields that you've studied. What I want to know is, since both of you studied theoretical Islamic geometry, do you still feel like that the sacred geometry spiritual side is still in your artworks? Now that you've contemporized it, that you've made it into a product or in an artwork or into a contemporary work, does that still hold?
That's a very good question, because you have to be very honest here. If I'm creating traditional art or Islamic art, am I being a lifestyle of being traditional, so being even a spiritual person or not, or religious person or not? Is that important to have or not? But I know nobody's complete, and nobody have still yet know himself. It's always a journey, it's always a development. And I like to believe creating this work will get us closer to the truth. It will really elevate us mentally, spiritually, and also body-wise by crafting a specific thing. From what I learned in the practice of this, connecting your mind and body and soul into an artwork is something, there's something happened there. It's not just something that's produced, but if your involvement in it, and if you believe in that some sort of transition of energy, or if you want to call it anything, but it resonates when you see an artwork in the wall with the small deformities, and you can relate to it, because at the end we're all humans, and we can relate to that within even the standard of beauty. There's all this documentary that shows the geometry of beauty within the faces, in our faces, and how they break down within the balance and the golden ratio and so forth. And they always say, yes, you have this beautiful proportion and perfection, but there's always this small thing, either مثلا خالة أو العين أصغر شوية or so forth, that gives it the whole complete of beauty. And I think it's an interesting relation, because you have al-jamal, you have al-kamal. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala huwa al-kamal. He is the ultimate perfection. And what we're trying to do is to create beautiful work. نحاول نعمل الجمال. So إن الله جميل يحب الجمال. We're trying to elevate, and we're trying to get closer to that state. With our faults and failures, because in the end we're trying to reach to that. But for me, and I think for some, it's a journey, and we're always trying to produce and show that. Because for me personally, if you look at the geometry art that I do, you would think I'm very organized and everything is just in order. But
I've seen your studio.
Yeah, so you know
It's
exactly.
not organized.
So it's a very interesting relationship.
The whole team.
Completely. But it's nice to see that even the artwork, does it represent the person that what he's doing or not? And the word sacredness, al-muqaddas, al-qadasa, it's a very interesting word, because does it embody an object that lays on it? زي الحجر مثلا, كيف الحجر يكون مقدس? Is it, did it pass through to a specific stories, or it was touched by a specific person or not? Is it subjective? We make it sacred because we believe certain elements of it and we look at it in that way, or by itself that? But this is also, it can reflect in the artwork, I think.
I totally agree with you. I'm sure you have something to add.
Can you repeat the question?
I wanted to know, when you learned the sacredness of of the Islamic geometry, does that still hold true to you when you create your contemporary work?
Well, I approached it from the idea that this is traditional. I will not make it any more traditional than this, and it has its its position in time and history. So how I approached it is that I respect the traditional side of it, but how can I make it into a new traditional, contemporary way? I mean, how to evolve it and bend the rules a little bit. Remember that geometrical Islamic geometry is very decorative as well, and the repetition and tessellation of the shapes across big areas, it does have some symbolism in Sufism and in Islamic culture. And I wanted to get away from that. And so I do use some of the rules, but then I add my own.
That's so interesting. I know you touched a little bit on your use of watercolors. I really want you to elaborate a little bit more. The lines of geometric patterns are so strict and stark and mathematical, and the fluidity of watercolors is so natural and it has its own life somehow. I really want to know how you combine those two and what brought you to that point where I'm like, I'm going to use these two elements together.
I found a huge difference between using oil and watercolor. Watercolor, because I use lots of water in it and mix a lot of colors, I like the adventure side of watercolor, the unexpected. What can I do with this? Happy accidents. And using water to control it is quite difficult. And I love difficulty. I mean, what can you do with that? For example, when I'm working on a huge piece of work, I mix a lot of color just in case I need some of that, even if I throw that away later, because you can never mix the same exact shade of that color. And then, I mean, it's interesting to use the color pigment being controlled by pure water. I find that fascinating. And you control the opaqueness and the transparency. And that sends a certain language to the viewer, to the observer, which I can, manipulate and use for my advantage.
I find both of your work to be really representative of yourselves in a way even where it's just purely masculine and feminine, because your work is very delicate and it has that kind of process, and the concept is so strong. Like you were saying, you were talking about death and you're talking about freedom and you're talking about things like that. And on the other hand, Ahmed's work, you're using wood and you're using glass and you're making sculptures, installations, like big things that make a statement and really like are spectacular. And it's a very interesting conversation to have both of you sitting next to each other. Is that something that you wanted to display, like a masculinity or like a very strong reference when it comes to traditional art, which is sometimes very delicate?
Yeah, masculinity and what the other side you said, masculinity and feminine. But there's a lot of feminine that are very masculine, by the way.
Of course.
Of course, yeah.
I'm just talking about the aesthetic value of your work.
Okay. But I do believe in both. I do believe that we have a lot of commonality. But even though in the traditional arts, we always refer to geometry as the masculine side and in the Nabati as the female side or the feminine side. And you have all this, but I think they all connect together, and also the idea of yin and yang in different traditions as well. I have a lot of artwork, though. There's also with a watercolor and painting and so forth.
And drawing, you have a lot of lines.
A lot of, yeah. And a lot of people, when they look at it, say, like, you're so sensitive, you have all these details in there.
It becomes part of the practice.
Yes, yeah. Yes. And I do believe for sure, and each one of us, whether a male or female, have this part in them. It has a percentage of that. And I like to show in my work maybe it's like circles. There's idea that I am Angawi, I am Makkawi, I am Hijazi, I am Saudi, I am Arabi, and I am Insan, I am human. For any of those circles, they're all linked together, and they're not. There's no contradiction of each one of those. So when I show an artwork, I like it to connect on all of those levels in a way that I want to show it that people in Jeddah can relate to it, and also people from abroad that they can work with it. And in terms of the material, yes, I'm always interested in wood because there's always a live material. And recently I worked with water, and I was very worried in I was interested to work with water. I paint also with watercolors and so forth, but I wanted to really understand this medium because I do believe, as all of us artists know, sometimes the medium can tell you something and can lead you to a specific direction. And yes, please, I can show you some samples. And when I worked with water, I realized that I really wanted to celebrate that and find a way to see this medium as by itself, because there's no shape of water. There's the movie The Shape of Water, but there is no actual shape of water. Whenever you have a container, it just takes the shape of whatever it contains in. So I wanted to see what's the geometry behind that, and there was looking at the different traditions. Each one of them have a specific medium they have worked in before. For example, you can see here in the Tibetan practice that they will work in this artwork for many, many days, and they take it as part of the meditation process. And then they switch it off because they believe that just, again, recognition, and they develop it again to start all over. But they gain something from it, I believe. And this, the art of cymatics in the bottom, you can see the sand and the metal. When a certain vibration comes along, you have this beautiful formation that comes, that gives you this beautiful pattern, again, within nature that we see. And I always love to see what is the material will give me. And I was trying to work before with different medium. And I tried to work with water in this time. And this is some experiment. I was trying to put it within a tube because I was trying to see this journey of water that comes along. And in this artwork, a lot of people were surprised, this is, and it came from me, even though I always have this crazy innovation in my mind and in myself, but I had it mostly in my studio as well, but I didn't want to show it until it's really completing to what I'm trying to show. And the natural progression of this work, this has been many years in development, but I really wanted to show this beauty of the water transmitting from one place to another. And I used food color for a bit to show it. And I wanted to show the connection between the geometry of the space and the movement of water within it. So I have created a structure based on the installation piece that is from a triangle, which is usually in geometry symbolize man, and then the rectangle because of the space. And I saw the beautiful link between this geometry and lines. I have to use straight lines because of the water fluidity to be better and easier. And I really loved how the water flow into it. And in a way, why we are mesmerized by looking at the fountain, why we're mesmerized to look at the sea or river. There's this connection between us and the water, even though most of the percentage of our body is from water. So there's this beautiful synergy between it, and I really enjoyed to show it in an art piece that really can show. Every time you visit this work, you will realize and feel a specific feeling from it, and it's like I'm highlighting the engineering tubing of the fountain rather than the end result of water. When the water drips, I wanted to celebrate this journey of transition. Yes, I used in a way the traditional technique of geometry that we know, with the contemporary use of technology, and how this water is pumped into the tubes is a whole different story that I had to learn from the technology of it. For always, yes, trying to, as Daniel was saying, to speak now, and it's very important to speak now. We don't want to just repeat whatever that's only in the past. I don't think the people in the past have done that either, because they're always in constant innovation. Whenever in that time they were always developing something in there. But it's just only the question between innovation within tradition and an order of balance, because at some point maybe you can go completely away from it. So
yeah, I think both of you are very innovative in the practices that you're both creating, the work that you're both doing, the things that you're both studying. For me, it's fascinating to watch both of your journeys. I think both of you are on this wonderful journey that that everybody's watching and waiting and excited to hear more about. I think we had a wonderful discussion, and I just wanted to open the floor for questions to see if anybody has anything to ask any of you. Please, if we can have a mic. No, so everybody can hear, and so it's archived in the video. And
Adwa likes to talk. First of all, thank you for being here. As a non-artist that doesn't know how to even draw a smiley face, this is magical. And truly speaking, you are an inspiration, and you broaden the mentality's horizons in an artistic way. And this is what an artist truly is. So thank you for being here. My question to Ms. Dania, so the whole algorithmic aspect of art is so interesting, because even in financial trading, you have algorithmic trading that automatically execute and do and fine-tune the perfect entrance to when to buy and when to sell a stock. So while you're talking about this, and I'm just trying to imagine how it even looks like from an artistic point of view, if you have any media that you could show us that could just give us like an image of what that looks like, because it's truly fascinating.
Well, it's just my first year. I mean, it's just a two-year Masters of Fine Art program. I've been experimenting, privately. I haven't shown it anywhere yet, but it's what curators call it: new media art, or generative art, or digital art. And it comes in many forms. There's Casey Rees, there's Zach Lieberman, and on top of my head I can't remember anymore. But it's a very growing genre of art, and it has an amazing future. Eventually, I'll be learning virtual reality. Augmented reality, machine learning, and what this course does is it is catered for artists like me. And when I say artists, it's not like painters. I'm talking about musicians, actors, dancers who have no idea how to code. And then after taking this course, the outcome, the artifacts they produce are mesmerizing and incredible. And so I guess you have to wait and see what will happen.
We're very excited to see what Dania is going to create after this course. Yes, please.
All right, Ustad Ahmed. So looking at this, I almost want to come and steal the laptop and take these images because I can't believe this is done by an artist, let alone a Saudi artist. How can Saudis visit these exhibitions, and going after that, what are your plans to showcasing your art locally in the region, along with, from a global perspective?
This is a Saudi show.
Yes, but this would not be possible, alhamdulillah, illa with the collaboration of the Saudi Art Council, لأنه this is the space for there, and each archer was commissioned to do a piece. I was giving a space, and alhamdulillah, I have developed this thing, and also to ensure they have the right tools and budget for that. It was crazy. This is a project I've been working on for many years. Big part of it is this technical part. I only showed you the geometry part, but this, to have the air, to have the water pumping in the Pacific time, and that it will change based on the rhythm. So sometimes you have a watercolor comes darker and then lighter. So this is all the program that I was really keen to learn. And I'm not an engineer. I'm not a person who's into chemical engineering and so forth. But that's, again, the journey of any artist going into a path that they will gain this thing, this experience and this knowledge by producing any work, rather than the end result of work, how we're going to look. This is a personal journey for each one of us. So yes, I want to be into that because I want to gain this, and I want to get body again, mind and spirit. They're all connected together. I want to elevate it in a specific way. And this work, inshallah, I'm planning to do a different installation of it. It depends on the space. I have a lot because it's been in my mind, like one of those projects you have in your mind and you neglect it for a bit, you come back, and neglect it, you go back for it. And I'm keen to show it in that way, and I'm keen to show it in the way that is right and justifying the idea of what it is. And yes, I really thank you for your words, and I really, Bilax, I admire your work, and I think places like this to have a dialogue and discussions is fascinating, and I hope still each journey and each mission that I keep learning from this, and as artists, as creatives, I was always mesmerized to see that. I do believe artist lays within each one of us.
Agreed, yeah.
For sure. And I start realizing that
everybody can be an artist.
Yes, when I start teaching. To be honest, in the school that I teach in Jeddah, I have students above 70 years old, mashallah, and students above 20 years old.
You have to come visit when you're in Jeddah. It's such a beautiful space.
And 2 years, alhamdulillah, and whoever graduate can go back and teach again. And they are inspiration to me. يعني تخيلي واحدة في سن أمي مثلا حاول أعلمها شيء أنا feel يعني شيء شوية بطريقة بس at the same time this is beautiful energy that we have, and I really saw that. I really saw the idea of an artist within each one of us. You just need to give it time, and you just to nourish it and see whatever you do. And I believe an art is a state that we reach to. That's why we have the art of cooking, the art of war, the art of so forth. It's a journey and a state that we reach to. A lot of people might disagree, but I think it's not the lifestyle of an artist as we all stereotype. No, it's more of this person who's trying to refine himself more and more and more and more. And inshallah, I hope it's a journey for all of us we're trying to seek. Yani.
I swear, one last question.
Go ahead. اسألي. إلا إذا أحد ثاني عنده سؤال.
One last question.
اسألي.
Thank you. Okay, so this question is to both of you. Monetizing art, and this is a matter and يعني, that all artists have been speaking for in terms of history. From Van Gogh, he died to like what, minus 10 euros to his name. He was a poor man. Most of these artists that we look at, when you come to monetizing art, where do you see this going in the near future, as well as where do you see this going locally in Saudi Arabia? Monetizing your art.
Let me answer this question because that's a curatorial gallery question. That's not an artist question. The artist needs to just make art.
But he needs to eat.
But we are in charge of selling the art.
Yes, of course. I am. مو لا. بس بالعكس, I like to see, because we always have this relationship between the artist and the gallerist and the institutions and so forth. And a lot of art that changed the whole world is based on artist movement, not gallery movement. And it starts from individuals and from individuals, artists who met each other and they had this dialogue. طبعا art would not exist without the patrons of art. And the people who made sure and paid for this piece of work. Who would pay thousands of art and of amount of money for a piece of art إلا إذا يكون في أحد مهتم and somebody's there inspired. But it's a very interesting relationship. But as we all know in Saudi, it's still new. We are always been driven by commercial entities of art and run by galleries, and that's a fact. But alhamdulillah, and there's been a lot of initiatives, whether with Jamil Initiative, Saudi Art Council, ITHRA, now Hayat al-Thaqaf, alhamdulillah, and MISC, and there's so much amazing to see that. Imagine many years before, we haven't done, nobody was shedding light into art.
We didn't even have one. Now we have 6.
Yes. Nothing. And it was all based on individuals. And one thing we tried to do as an artist, we tried to collect one another. We had a group called Al-Hunger. We were all independent artists. And we tried to do a show. We did one in Al-Balad, which is in a ruined house, and another one in Tahliya, in also a ruined house. Then it became, alhamdulillah, a space so people can exhibit their work. But I think it runs by that. It should run by the individual. And I'm not saying that we don't work. Definitely, we now institutions, look at us right now, working with institutions to do this. But it's beautiful to work and have a balance between both, but never into one scale. Galleries have, without those galleries, we never will be here, to be honest. You exposed us, you brought us to the right people. But let's have many roads, not have only one road, because that would completely change the game of art.
Danny, do you have anything to add?
Well, on top of that, among these amazing, institutions, there are a lot of art collectors as well, who take initiatives and support artists, and I think that is a very, very important part too. On the monetary level, what I find difficult is, in the future, if I want to use digital art, how am I going to sell it? If I'm going to use some kind of technology, how am I going to preserve it, maintain it? These questions are out there. Until now, they haven't been answered. So it's such a challenge as well.
Yes.
That's so interesting. Yeah, I've never
I have
actually
something to
thought
say,
about
but I won't.
I wanted to just say, when it comes to your question and your background and field, I feel like there is a gap in Saudi investments where artwork is not yet seen widely as an investing platform. It should be there from consultants and bankers and investment bankers and things like that for them to say, this is a very good investment opportunity. It's also going to look really great in your house, and it's also going to give you a lot of clout to have this and such an artist in your collection. This is done internationally, of course. It's something that's not yet explored widely in Saudi Arabia, and I think would be a great addition to anybody's portfolio, and also great support for the artists who are working so hard.
I agree, Maraki, and on top of that, when you look at art as an alternative investment and you go to a fund, for instance, that you want to put your money in there and ask them to invest it in artworks, and you do your due diligence and you find out, okay, then a specific market that has a benchmark of a specific projection of where the risk is and where's my money going, then yeah, and I feel like we need to create a formula. The formula is yet to be created in the kingdom for such a case, because abroad, when you look at, when you were saying how do you monetize it and how do you actually look at that, and I feel like we have been struggling with this even as consultants and curators with the artists, is that we just want to make sure that they're aware of the value of their works and how to base it and how to price it. And we get this question a lot. Do you price artworks? How much do you think this would cost? And usually there is like a formula or an equation where you go, okay, pricing something in an auction house has its own criteria. Pricing something, if you're going through a gallery, then you price it in a specific way if an artist is selling it. But then again, how do you realize, okay, a benchmark of an artist? So a benchmark of an artist, usually by an international standard, you'd say, okay, how much did he show in the primary market? And then is he in the secondary market? Has he been, has he sold here or there? What?
Nothing.
No,
lots of information.
Yeah, no, really, because we need to understand, and people like, for instance, Adwa's curiosity within the art market or the art sector, we need to just give some sort of how the formulas are created.
You need to cultivate that curiosity as well.
And really give them, okay, we do have structures, and when you say primary market, sorry, I'll explain a bit, I'll elaborate on that. So primary market is galleries, exhibitions, and institutions that showcase your exhibitions probably, and so on. Secondary market is then when a series becomes more rare, and then you go into auction houses. And so that's how the circle kind of goes wider and wider, and then you have, okay, you sold. And then another thing, artists become confused when you sell at charity, and obviously charity auctions are known to be inflated in prices because of many reasons. Sometimes tax exemption, and sometimes it's really difficult, I can say at this point, to come and say, okay, we're pricing it with this exact formula. So I feel like, as Ahmed was saying, we all have to work together to figure out benchmarks for the artist, something that will give them the worth of their works. And at the same time, I feel like it's a huge responsibility, even for us, for consultants, for curators, for gallerists, for institutions, to take it upon ourselves to really look into this in more depth and kind of remove that worry from the artist, because they then get conflicted between, shall I produce for the sake of, okay, how many pieces shall I have in my series? Will this kind of decrease? But also, it's a positive thing for them not to say, okay, I want to give in like a series of 10 pieces because there are 10 people demanding it. No, create 5, then you'll raise the demand for your next series, and then on you're going to have a higher price. The less the series are, the higher the price goes. Sorry.
Thank you so much, Reneem, for that short lecture on the art market. I think there's a question at the back. Thank you so much.
Thank you for the inspirational. Before I ask the question, Ahmed, before I meet you today, I had the honor to meet your artwork a year ago in Dubai during the Design Week. If I'm not mistaken, March 2017.
Yes.
And I don't forget the nice work. So my question, what's your advice for someone have a potential, someone having, how can he unlock an artist inside him? What's your advice?
It's a very difficult if somebody have an ongoing job, and of course, and you have something that you have a family in, and you want to go within yourself and do that. But I think it could be easy, and if you can just when you meditate or when you pray, and you give it time. You have that time for it because you know that this is good for you, good for your soul, and so forth. And art also could be treated in a way that you give it its time. And the process of not knowing what it is, it's completely normal because we're always in this constant doubt. And we don't know that if we do this or not. But as long as we keep just pushing and moving, if there is an interest that you like, if you like, for example, working with your hands more, if you like to paint more, if you like to create sculpture, if you just give it a chance. And I think you would never, if you cannot give it the whole chance because you have all this restrictions that you have to follow, just give it parts. And then you will let it grow while you're doing your own thing. And you maybe can just later on have this beautiful transition. Some people just cut it off and say, like, I want to just be an artist. I just want to do this. And you have the risks. If they're alone, they can take this risk by itself. But if they have a family and they have people to support, that's a very big risk. So I always feel like just try to be true to yourself and try to always find ways. Don't shy off. One thing that really hold me back in a lot of times is fear. And I remember Reneem have given me a book. The title of it, the art of fear. It was, and in a way that is how artists always stops the struggle because of this fear in them, and the fear of trying, and the fear of producing, and the fear of just putting and shining out in an uncomfortable state. We always say in the field of art, if you're uncomfortable, this is good. This is very good if you're uncomfortable, because you always try to do something. If you're comfortable, khalas, and I'm not trying to challenge myself or try to do anything. So I think I'm like anybody, like you, or trying to experiment. When I did the engineering side, I had no idea I know how to. I just give it a try. I talked to somebody and I tried to do it. So I think if there is this interest, or anybody who have this interest, just try it and see. Just take it as a practice in the day. My teacher who teach geometry, he have this beautiful ada that he does, that in the morning before when the sun rises, he look at the sun. When the sun set, he looks at the sun. So when the sun rises, you half a circle, and then when the sun set, it's also half a circle. So he always say, I like to complete my circle every day. And after that, he does geometry and does work. So it's very beautiful routine of lifestyle that even not only he's creating art, but he's setting this lifestyle of it, which is very beautiful. Yani.
Yeah, I definitely agree with his point. I also have, I think that visiting these kind of events and going to museums and going to galleries and making time to see what's happening in your area and in your city and going to the institutions that people are really trying to work hard on is so important for you to get inspired. Another thing that we do at home is that we have a canvas on an easel and some colors. And while we're working, or if we're feeling stressed out, or if we had a bad day, we'll go to it and we'll just draw anything. There's a lot of ways for you to awaken your inner artist.
Come and take a workshop if you're interested in Jeddah. I give a lot of workshop, wallah, for kids and adults as well. And this is some of the images here you can see.
Can we switch back to the presentation, please?
And honestly, people have no art background completely. وما شاء الله في واحدة جدة, she's a grandmother, يعني تخيل, a grandmother, and she built the whole table by herself. She made a whole ceramic piece, and she said she's now godmother Zilla, and said, don't talk to me. I'm just gonna be right now producing when I'm work. I have time for myself. And she told her husband, told her kids. And she managed to do that, and I saw them, going through that process. And they have created amazing work, صراحة. And they had no art background at all. Kids from البلد, they're all around, they're learning and doing. So you never know, يعني. Just give it a try, give it a go. This kid, for example, he عنده autism, توحد. And when I was giving the class with all of them, he didn't even ask for a campus, and he was just doing, and he produced all this work of geometry by his hand without using a tool. فسبحان الله, حتى I was thinking about it, he inspired me so much إنه حتى ما سأل, ما قال ما عندي tool, ما حسوي, ما عندي ما عندي أداة حوقف. He just did whatever he did, which is great. No, I'm serious. إن شاء الله إذا في جدة أو إذا في الإمارات برضو هناك we'll give workshops. Just give it a go, I'm not promoting, but I feel بس just go ahead. يلا طيب.
طيب, thank you so much. Oh, okay. We'll do some questions. Okay.
السلام عليكم. طبعا راح أتكلم بالعربي. طبعا أشكركم أستاذ أحمد وأستاذة دانيا. جدا كان العرض شيق بشكل كبير، وأنا كنت حصفق مليون مرة وأنتم تتكلمون، لأنه ما شاء الله إبداع وحقيقي حسيت فيه. الشيء الجميل أنه من البداية كنت أجاوب على أسئلة كثيرة وأنتم تتكلمون، خصوصا لما عرضت البيت والعمارة. أنا قلت واو، لأن كانت كأنه ألف ليلة وليلة. فشعرت أن هذا الشيء ما كان أنه فجأة الفن يخرج فجأة، لا، كان من نعومة أظافرك أنت كنت تعيش في بيت فن. هذا الشيء له تأثير كبير. الأشكال الهندسية، ولما كنت تتكلم تقول أنا إنسان منظم جدا، فأنا أعتقد أن هذا له تأثير، أن بين المسافات ما بين كل خط وخط أيضا في تنظيم معين، وفي اللي هو خلينا نقول حساب، وفي أسرار. هو الحساب ما بين كل ضلع وضلع في له سر معين وفي له طاقة. هذه الطاقة أعتقد أنها وهبتك عبقرية كثيرة. وأنا شفت شيء اللي هو الشكل اللي فيه الووتر، الحياة، كأنه حياة في الكون. فأنا أتمنى أن هذا الشيء ينعرض على مستوى العالم، مش بس في جدة. ليش الناس ما تشوف هذا الإبداع العظيم؟ دائما الإنسان اللي يكون طاقته قريبة من الناس ويعطيهم من المعرفة اللي عنده ويسوي وركشوب بحب وبسعة صدر، وإنه يعلم سواء كان صغير أو كبير أو أي أحد، هذا دليل أنه في اللي هي الكارما. قد أنا ما أعطيك هي راح تجيني بشكل أكبر. فأنا أحييك بشكل كبير، وأنا أعتقد أنك أنت بكرة حتكون شيء كبير جدا.
الله يسعدك. شكرا الله يسلمك.
There's one more question. Nawaf, if you can just give it to Allah.
أنا إن شاء الله هذه كلها repetition بجد بتأثر. حتى ما شاء الله في شغل داني إيش الحياة نفسها، هل حياتنا إحنا كده سيستماتيك وفيها أوردر، لأنه ويدو نعمل هذا البروبورشن. بس دائما صراحة الأهم أنا بالنسبة لي إنه خلقنا كل شيء بقدر، كل شيء مخلوق كان بقدر وبنسب وأشياء. فميبي الأشياء اللي بتصير بتحاكي الماركرزم والجيناتكس اللي عندنا that it just reform it again بطريقة وأخرى يعني. فإن شاء الله يا رب إن شاء الله نكون قدها، وإن شاء الله نقدر نعمل هذا الشيء، لأنه اللي أعطانا لازم نعطي. يعني إحنا تعلمنا من أحد، why should we give it and keep it to us نقول لا، لازم الواحد يكمل. المويه لو تقعد راكده ما هي كويسه ابدا.
Go ahead.
اوكي ابي ابدا باشكركم على القصص اللي قلتوها، ومره حفزتوني. I was feeling a bit low، فيعني it really motivated me ان اشوف اعمال من فنانين سعوديين، و the whole event really boosted like my energy. My question is a bit weird عن collaborations. قد فكرتوا انه يكولابريت مع بعض او مع فنانين سعوديين ثانيين؟ وايش فكرتكم مع انه تشتغلون مع فنانين ثانيين وتكونون شيء جديد؟ قد سويتوا did you ever collaborate with other artists ولا لا؟
And I would love to collaborate with other artists, but it's sometimes I think it's very important to have chemistry between these two artists to produce, you know, deep work. You don't want it as a business association thing, but of course there's so many, you know, talented artists that I admire, and I mean it will be a dream to do a collaboration with them. Even, you know, emerging artists. You know, there's so much talent out there that is undiscovered yet, and it would be fantastic to do a collaboration with them as well.
And I would love to collaborate with you, inshallah, in the future. And that's
Inshallah.
not because here, wallah, inshallah, because I did work with Dana Awartani, and I am in a project. And also my colleagues in Prince's School as well. بالعكس, I always run into you, inshallah, Rab, and I love the work you do. So, and I think this collaboration always have this beautiful dialogue between cultures. I know in traditional arts people think we do just patterns وكلنا نفس الشيء، بس كل واحد له unique وله بصمته, and which is great لأنه it doesn't limit us. It بالعكس expand us to do more. I myself, I always love to work with artists. I always been يعني حتى within my studio alhamdulillah it's always open. لو شفتوا الفيديو حق البول and people coming and sitting, Raneen maybe remembers, and we have even creatives, musicians coming in. This energy, زي ما كنت بقول, chemistry is very important. If you look at the history of a lot of artists around the world, you always celebrate that, whether in cafes and poets and so forth. Yeah, and it's good to have a soma and just be alone for a bit, but also good to have this dialogue and collaboration. It's like a balanced relationship, because at the end you have to sit down by yourself and produce work. I did this with a group of friends of ours. We call ourselves Al Hunger, and all of us are founders, and we are like more than 13, and we work together. The most difficult part, if you go as a collective مع other artists, is the ego side. كل واحد عنده ego, which is not something always bad. If we find a way to put the ego على جنب شوية and have a collective work, هذا هو أهم شيء. دائما there is a balance between الأنا والنا هو ضمير جمع المتصل يعني أو me and we, and it's always known. But here in this exhibition, as examples to your questions, we have worked all together. We even have created the show together. كل واحد قاعد and say, okay, you're going to put your work here, I'm going to put my work there. وقاعدين كل واحد مع الثاني celebrated one another's work. And even in ما جبنا أحد مثلا professional hang the work ولا drill, إحنا جبنا التولز, كل واحد جاب من بيته, كل واحد صرف شوية من عنده مبلغ. And we took this ruin house, بيت رباط عند رباط بناجة اللي في البلد, and we worked on it together with the group. We even have breakfast وغدا وعشاء, artists مع بعض يعني. And it's a beautiful energy, it was one of a kind at that time. And we learned how to put each other's ego for a bit to our side.
For a bit. Yeah.
Yeah.
It was a very successful experiment, I think, Hunger 2 as well.
Yes, very much. لأنه حتى صراحة this energy expanded a bit outside, and we start working with the kids حقون البلد. and we started جبنا فرفيرة, جبنا table tennis, and we started doing workshops معهم. هم those kids, they start collecting those carpets for living. Us being with them and احتكاكنا معهم, we wanted to create this kind of games and kind of new way of looking. In this one, they were just looking at the camera obscure, so even the bugs that they look at it every day for just living, they start now looking at the ballet in a different way for Pacific time. It was a really, really good time صراحة in there, because يعني we artists have this thing to bridge between classism and ما عندهم هذا الشيء اللي هو مثلا okay, art only for Pacific niche and so forth. So the collectively see it between us, it will ripple effect to many things afterwards. بس هي الego situation هذه, if it works, we can put it aside and we can work together, and it always come back again. And the chemistry, as you mentioned, for sure, this is a big part of it. فإن شاء الله بالعكس, we're all interested to work with one another يعني.
On that note, thank you so much for being with us tonight. Thank you for closing Saudi Cultural Days with us tonight. And thank you so much for your support. Thank you to the General Cultural Authority for organizing and inviting all of us to be here today. It was truly a pleasure to be a part of this journey. And I hope we can all collaborate together in the future.
Yes, let's collectively celebrate.
Inshallah. Thank you so much. Good night.